Welcome back, viewers around the world. It is Arise News KPMG 2025 Budget Day. And of course, we are diving further into the 2025 budget of restoration, 54.9 trillion naira. We now are going to be speaking with the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Atiku Bagudu. And we're going to be diving into the fiscal path for Nigeria. Honorable Minister, thank you so much for joining us. It's good to see you again. You were with us. You kicked things off last year. You're kicking things off again with us. I say thank you so much. I know you're a busy man. I wanted to start first off with the increase in the budget for a number of people who are asking, going from 49.7 to 54.2 to 54.9. I guess increases in some of the agencies where you're expecting higher revenue. Can you speak towards that?
Well, once again, thank you for inviting me. And just by way of background, I was here last year, and we are very clear last year that the renewed hope agenda is about confronting our reality without going back to blame game, but just appreciating that despite all past efforts with mixed successes, we are not where we want to be. And we have to take top choices, which Mr. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has courageously taken. And last year, when we met here, the budget proposal was for 27.95 trillion. However, later in the year, there was an amendment to the budget that increased the budget to 35 trillion. So, and the 2024 achieved some remarkable successes, particularly in terms of reduction of debt to GDP ratio. Sorry, the fiscal is a deficit to GDP, which is a very important measure that analysts around the world pay attention to. So, and given the fact that it came at a time when the president had restored the sanctity of the central bank, meaning that the fiscal authorities cannot borrow beyond the legal limit of 5% from the central bank, which means was not available. And yet, in spite of that, that commendable success was recorded. And activities that were intended to be funded, particularly security gains that have come on the back of making resources available. And just last week, a state governor mentioned at a function that revenue to the states have tripled in the last few months. So these are the backgrounds with which we need to look at the 2025 increases. So the 2025 budget is the first full year budget coming after the achievement of two things: total deregulation of petroleum prices, total deregulation of the foreign exchange market, and in addition, the reduction in electricity subsidy by creating tariff categories which had improved, have reduced the government losses in the sector. And thus, the budget of 54.99 trillion is a reflection of our confidence that the full effect of those tripod deregulation of subsidy regime will have an effect. Two, the increased security gains is making it possible for economic activity, particularly oil and gas production, to normalize. 2.12 may sound large, but we have achieved higher than that in our national life. In fact, the technical capacity of our oil industry is higher than 2.12 even as of now. What is a major missing factor is security, which pipelines have been vandalized and infrastructure for evacuation has been impaired. And with increased investment in security, we are seeing, to quote Mr. President, sunshine in all areas of the economy, particularly oil production, gas production. And secondly, not only are we expecting a resumption or rather heightened activity in the sector, but we are also anticipating lower cost because our costs have been among the highest in the world compared to our competitors. Again, based on the fact that security is a big element, even a driver of the cost. So we are looking forward to higher production at a lower cost, and which will believe will have a material impact. And the tax reforms proposals that are before the National Assembly, and despite debates are widely acclaimed, we believe will also come into effect to further support the revenue projections that we have made in the 2025 budget of 54.99 trillion.
Fantastic. So speaking of oil, so as Twala Adeyemi went through, this $75 benchmark, I wanted to ask you about flexibility around adjusting it, because as of Friday last week, oil prices fell below $70. I just checked right now, it's just at 70. So, based on where oil prices are, Donald Trump wants OPEC to reduce prices. OPEC said they will possibly add more barrels of oil to the markets in April of next year, which will increase supply. So if oil remains under the benchmark, then are you open to have to adjust that, or what does that do to your revenue production?
Well, Mr. President surprisingly was very, very interrogative about this issue, because he said we should be mindful of the transition then as it was in the United States and the views of President Trump about putting pressure to get more out of all oil-producing nation. But given that a number of countries in the global economy are struggling to go back to higher levels of productivity or production, GDP growth was weak in most countries, and most countries are seeking to go back to even where they were pre-COVID. We believe that the increased pressure by countries to maintain or increase or even increase industrial activity will keep demand for oil at a higher level. And even if we are to see an effect, there will be a lag. It's not going to be something that will change dramatically in a few months. Or maybe it will take a year or more. And fluctuations in markets is not unusual. For budget purpose, they are discounted in the sense that spot prices from January to date sometimes have been close to 80. So it's not yet worrisome that we have seen about 2 weeks of decline in oil prices. It's not surprising. It's not unexpected. We don't think it will impair our assumption.
Okay, fantastic. So for a lot of people in different sectors that are watching, they're asking, what is this budget going to do for me? So I want to get to agriculture, which was pointed out. And you mentioned the lag effect, which is very understandable. This May, I think the administration will be going on 2 years. So, things are still relatively early. The agriculture sector, the president declared a state of emergency in 2023, and output has been struggling. I think real GDP growth for 2023 was 1.13%, 2024 was 1.19%. We have a new livestock development agency. Livestock contracted by 8% last year, contracted by 4% in 2023. So it's in recession. With the amount of funds committed to agriculture to try to improve output and so on and so forth, are those funds justified, and are you optimistic that the results that you're seeking will be yielded?
Well, the Renewed Hope agenda have a number of priority items, 8 of them, and one of them is agriculture and food security. And the thought process is that agriculture is a key to poverty reduction, is a key to uplifting people out of poverty, is key to reduce inflation, as well as our desire to achieve higher level of inclusive growth, because it has the capability of mobilizing more people or supporting more people to do more. And with what we saw in the last few months, strong bumper harvest in many states, occasioned by increased insecurity, unfavorable weather conditions, and increased activity by those in the agricultural space, which is already impacting on prices of food items. It gives further impetus to do more in the agricultural, so that we maintain the trajectory of modernizing our agricultural production from the artisanal level to the livestock sector, to the fisheries sector, so that we can get yields to be higher. Because with improved yields, our people engaged in agriculture becomes wealthier and richer, which is a driver of wealth creation. And thus, more money, 1.5 trillion naira, is being put in the budget to recapitalize the Bank of
Industry,
the Bank of Agriculture.
Right.
And it is anticipated that with that recapitalization, the challenge we are seeing in funding agriculture by Main Street banks will be compensated for. Equally, there are a number of initiatives coordinated by the Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edu, in order to ensure that funding is provided to even those big private sector players in agriculture, who, because of the reforms and because of the cost of funds that have gone up because of the reforms, we have to take a systematic look at to support, to adjust because of the reform measures. So a number of initiatives are being undertaken in order to support agricultural production. We are engaging with investors around the world. Mr. President has been on different investment drives, and we have seen significant increase and interest in investing in the agricultural space. Mr. President was in Brazil. We have seen Brazilian investors committing close to $3 billion in livestock and crop production. We have just seen an announcement by a Saudi Arabia agriculture and livestock investment company that have increased their shares in the company Olam, that is based in Nigeria. We met them in Saudi Arabia on Christmas Eve, the coordinating minister and I, among others. And they spoke about Nigeria as a prospective second after Brazil in terms of agriculture. Strong absorptive capacity, hardworking people who are in the space and who have been limited by technology, by financing, that it's a great, strong market, that when those are fixed, and with the way the economy has been turned in the right direction, they are looking at investing more. This is in addition to increased activity that we are seeing at the small scale level and even at the artisanal level. But just on that, to also further support domestic production, 1 trillion naira has been provided additional in the 2025 budget to support the solid mineral sector. because while we have done a lot in terms of the institutional alignment, we have created a solid mineral sector, a steel ministry, but some of the risk money that is required to propel the sector to greater production and productivity have not been provided. And with this 1 trillion naira, one will see a further strengthening of activity in the solid mineral sector. We are seeing announcements by the day. Lithium plants are coming. At least 4 lithium plants are being constructed across Nigeria. Just day before yesterday in Abuja, Wale Edwin and I attended a signing ceremony where an investor is committing $400 million to a cement company in Kebbi State, as well as a lot of artisanal and industrial scale investment coming into the sector.
Fantastic. I have to ask you about this figure at the bottom here, the deficits, and the two-pronged question. So, one, plugging it with respect to domestic borrowing, there's the fear of, crowding out the private sectors with respect to domestic borrowing. On the other hand, stabilization, the exchange rate, you mentioned the CBN, the exchange rate has stabilized. Does that mean with a more stable exchange rate, you can go and borrow externally? And then 3, I hope I'm not asking too many questions. Asset sales. There's been a lot of talk about debt capital in Nigeria in hundreds of billions of dollars that could be sold to raise revenues to plug this. So are you, how are you going to plug this? Are you worried about crowding out, the private sector with domestic borrowing? Can you go external since naira has stabilized? And what about asset sales to try to plug the hole?
Well, let me start with asset sales because it has always been. Asset sale have always been the policy of government. But timing matters because when you sell an asset at a time, I remember McKinsey making a presentation to us when I was a governor about 3 years ago, and they valued the Niger Delta Power Holding Company plants that were built, that a $12 billion maybe investment. But at that time, because of market conditions, they say if you are to sell them, maybe you will record less than $2 billion. So Mr. President has always been clear that when the conditions are right, when we take the top choices, because even investors, before considering an asset investment, they have to consider the totality of measures, the difficult measures to turn the economy have been taken, and this will enhance the value of assets that we might have to sell. And I'm sure that is something consistent with our reform programs. Secondly, on the deficit of 14 trillion, given what we saw in the innovative approaches to financing, first because you don't have recourse to Central Bank of Nigeria at all. So under no circumstance will the Central Bank be going above the legal limit of 5%. So I think that should comport the economy that we are not going to have recourse to. So because we are also going to market, and we are going to market in different ways, innovative financing, innovative approaches, the local bonds have been issued where government have raised money. And this, of course, this represents a statement of intention just to ensure that those whom we have borrowed from will be confident that we will have enough to meet the expectation, to meet our debt service obligations. But if, as we anticipate, economic conditions will continue to improve, we don't see, maybe we may not need to spend up to that in debt servicing.
I want to touch on, there's so much to touch on, but running out of time, but education and our youth population. The budget allocation to education has increased. You've got the NEL fund, where the administration now is funding education for students who want to go and who are unable to pay for them. It's I want to ask you about job creation, because it's one thing to, yes, get more students into school and get them to get degrees, but what about the labor force that they are going into? Can it absorb them? So what is, as far as this budget is concerned, in terms of stimulating the economy in order to create demand for skills and jobs for this youth that are going into the labor force, what's the outlook there? And then, are you worried about defaults? I mean, I know that the fund, this NEL fund, allows for students to wait until they get a job before they can pay things back. So job creation, the labor force for the youth, in terms of education and your outlook there, as far as this budget is concerned.
I think for us, the big story is that the economy is headed in the right direction. And once it is headed in the right direction, what is important is additions to do. So when public investment is made to support education and skill in an economy that is facing in the right direction, then the private sector can even be more confident that there's a skill set in the country that can support private investment. And it makes sense, it's mutually profitable. And that's so both the NEL fund and the increase in spending on education are designed to support that. Equally, we are engaging with many countries in order to see how legitimately our young ones can provide outsourcing services from where they are, can participate in business processing outfits. I was in Enugu about a month ago, where a European business park, I visited a European business park supported by the Australian Development Corporation. And young men and women are providing services from Enugu to companies in Europe. And so we are talking to a number of countries. In fact, my ministry is leading that because we are responsible for development cooperation. So we are discussing with a number of countries. The current country director of the World Bank was coming from Philippines, where he helped create over 1.5 million jobs for Philippines young men and women, providing services to companies from Philippines. And we are engaging him to share from that experience and do more. The Ministry of Digital Economy is currently in the process of training 3 million Nigerians in technology jobs. And we have funding for it. We have secured over $600 million in a program called ADICE, that is for training and retraining of young. We have seen demand for software engineers from different countries. Japan, the Japanese ambassador told me that Nigeria is the first port of call for Japanese companies now seeking software engineers. So this investment, yes, there might be some risk. Somebody who took a loan may be challenged. Even in a normal market, we have seen the student loan market in the United States, which is more advanced than us. Yet sometimes the government may even need to intervene. But I think for Nigerians, I believe that is a desirable program to the extent that even if circumstance demand that those beneficiaries are supported by a reduction, I'm sure Nigerians will welcome it.
Fantastic. Running out of time. I still have so much to ask you. Do I do health or infrastructure? Okay, healthcare. Health is wealth. Also, you've increased the allocation for health. But, Honorable Minister, what we've noticed from studies is that most healthcare is either employee-funded or out of pocket, right? So the approach to getting more universal coverage with healthcare should be targeted from a job creation angle, to where more people have jobs and then they can stay healthy and take care of themselves. What's the outlook there?
I agree with you. That's why we want to create an economy that is creating jobs and meaningful jobs. And the only way to do it is to ensure that distortions are eliminated as support and equitable, the ease of doing business is promoted. We have President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu have created, in a matter of 18 months, an economy where we are not determining winners. It's a fair market, and we are seeing value for it. Companies, analysts, investment outfits are increasingly showing interest. We believe that will create the kind of private sector-led economy that we have always sought. And because the structural changes that we need to take have been taken, and therefore our economy will continue to add jobs that will support health insurance, among other desirable social outcomes.
I'll be remiss if I don't ask you about power and electricity. So infrastructure, you've allocated a chunk of money there. You talked about the tripod. We call it the three-headed dragon on Arise News, the FX, the electricity and fuel subsidies. You have done quite a bit to try to normalize the tariff structure. We hit, I think it was 5,801.6 megawatts, a new peak. The Minister of Power did say, though, that there's still legacy debts owed to the GenCos of about 2 trillion, and there's still a tariff shortfall of 1.9 trillion. So, and I understand the pressure on Nigerians with the whole Band A, B thing. In fact, the Minister of Power, that's Mr. Adelabo, even said that Band B customers are not paying enough. How do we attract more investors to come into Nigeria to get us to, in order to improve our power infrastructure, if the tariff regime is not completely liberalized? Well,
that's why I said, first, I started by explaining the doctrine of renewed hope agenda, and that's a very sober reflection. It calls for very sober reflection and appreciation of President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. You could have easily come to the job and say, legacy debts are cost, and blame them on someone. Right. But he said, well, we asked for this job, no blame game. How do we solve it? And we are solving it. He's leading to find a solution in the most market-supportive manner so that they are sustainable. The combination of the changes that have taken place have limited the options available to reform the electricity sector as quickly as we had intended, because the combination of both the fuel subsidy removal and the forex market liberalization, which has been responded to by increased social protection, made us to re-examine how can we ensure that the electricity sector. I was in Saudi Arabia before coordinating minister of the economy before Christmas, and the minister of economy of Saudi Arabia was telling us that about 9 years ago they appreciated that they are not facing the right direction, given what is happening in the neighbors. And one of the things they realized that just like Nigeria, a combination of subsidies is taking away all the revenue, and including electricity subsidy. Electricity is still subsidized significantly but Mr. President is determined, and in spite of all the approvals, let's make more available so that Nigerians can be confident. Let us investigate what we can do about legacy debts. The discourse, there are challenges with the privatization exercise itself as to the capacity and experience of the distribution companies. Most of them do not have utility background, so maybe that is something. But there has been concern, and steps are being taken, and the GenCos are being engaged. Recently, there has been a board announcement of the National Bulk Electricity Trading company. And among first issues they are going to confront is the issue of cleaning up the debt so that we encourage production. Nigeria has been remarkable in ensuring that even if it is inconvenient, we meet commitment. Right. The Azura, a company, because there is a multilateral investment guarantee of the World Bank, we have been, as painful as it is, meeting all obligations. So the segmentation of the market and the increased investments, I believe we'll see more power availability, and that might encourage the discussion on appropriate pricing for a wider category. And increasing use of AI-based technology and digitization to collect both from current customers and as well as other government services. I'm sure we'll see more collection even at the current tariff rate.
Minister, you've been fantastic with your time. Technology is my favorite topic, but we've run out of time. 30 minutes flies so fast. Mr. Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, the Honorable Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this 2020.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, it is Budget Day 2025, Arise News KPMG. Up next, my colleague Bosun Amofayo will be talking to the private sector about their reaction to the budget. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.